Uh, Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Robertson, and I'm chairing today's event on behalf of the Belong Network, when we are looking at the report, Together We Can Achieve Unity. We're so pleased to have all of you with us. Could I ask you, please, if you want to put your cameras on so we can see you, that would be wonderful. Might you also put your organisation name, if you're representing an organisation, into your name so that we can see, and put that into the chat as well. So you might like to just send a chat saying, hello, I'm here from wherever it is, and just say that so that we can see who is here. That would be fantastic. So we are here today for the Belong Network, which is a wonderful network of which we're very proud at the Anne Frank Trust, where I work, to be members. A network of organisations and individuals working in the field of social cohesion, doing research in that field, doing advocacy in that field, but above all bringing us together so that we can learn from each other and tackle racism and all forms of prejudice and bring our communities, our disparate communities, closer together, celebrating diversity. With one of the projects that the Belong Network has undertaken in the last couple of years is to carry out research on behalf of 9 organisations who are funded by what was called the Ministry for Housing, Communities and Local Government, now called, and I'm not going to get the name right, I don't think, but I think the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. And that department funded organisations to do work tackling race and faith-based hate crime in a preventative way. And I work at the Anne Frank Trust UK, and we empower 10 to 15-year-old young people to speak out against all forms of prejudice and discrimination inspired by the life and work of Anne Frank. And we were one of the organisations that took part in and was funded by the MHCLG to run those programmes. And we brought together the 9 organisations with Belong and collected our learning and our data so that we could learn from each other and share with yourselves and with others what we found from that work. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So roughly the format for this morning is that Joe Broadwood, the Chief Exec of Belong, is going to present and summarise to us the findings of the report. And then 3 of the organisations that delivered those services are going to present their particular experience. That's Sharon Booth from Solutions Not Sides, Nas Hussain from Manningham Housing Association, and Tim Mortimer from the Faith and Belief Forum. And then there will be chance for all of us to comment, ask questions, discuss at the end of that. So, and when we come to that part, or throughout the presentation, do start putting questions or comments into the chat if you would like to do that. And I'll do my best to field those questions to people. But you can also, when we come to that part of the event, hold up, raise hands to ask a question that way. Friends, I wanted to acknowledge before we go any further with the agenda that we are all in a strange, sad time with the news from Ukraine. And all of us fundamentally working against prejudice and in social cohesion are believers in democracy and liberty. And that is currently being stamped out in Ukraine by the military forces of Mr. Putin. And I felt we couldn't be here together and not acknowledge that in some way. So colleagues, could I suggest that we now just hold a 1-minute silence to hold in our thoughts the people of Ukraine? colleagues, friends, thank you very much indeed. One thing I forgot to say in my introduction, friends, is that please use social media if you would like to. And if you do, please tag the Belong Network at Belong Network so that they can retweet and we can spread the word and have an online conversation that we share with others, as well as those of us who are here today. But without more ado, I'm going to introduce Jo Broadwood. Jo has been a couple of years, I think now, at the Belong Network, which was itself founded in 2019. Jo is, has a career of working in social cohesion, and my one thing I would say to all of us here today, I hope everybody here is a member of the Belong Network and is supporting this brilliant organisation. If you are not, you do nothing else today, please sign up to the membership of the Belong Network. Jo is going to introduce to us the piece of research that was undertaken. Jo.
Thanks so much, Tim. Huge thanks to you for chairing this event on behalf of Belong. And we're really delighted to present the work of these 9 organisations who did such fantastic work across 2020 and 2021 in order to tackle race and faith hate crime. I'm just going to share my screen, so just forgive me whilst I find my presentation. Can everybody see that? Okay, that's great, thank you. So the report that I'm going to talk about is the Together We Can Achieve Unity report. But just before that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Belong do. So what Belong do is we bring people, places and organisations together with the purpose of unleashing the energy empowering communities for creating stronger, more connected and resilient communities and places. And we do that by connecting people across sectors and geographies with evidence of what works, resources, toolkits and each other. And we do that at a local and a national level. And on behalf of our members, we're advocating for improvements to policy and practice for a more united, kinder and more connected British society. I'm just going to talk in this presentation about the context in which these organisations were delivering their programmes, the outcomes, the collective reach and impact of the programme, and then some of the conclusions and recommendations that we came to for the future. So I don't think it'll be difficult for you to cast your minds back, but during 2020-2021, we're obviously going through the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, there were very low levels of social mixing. The 2019 British Integration Survey showed that 44% of Brits had no contact with people from a different ethnicity to them, and 1 in 5 had no contact with people from a different class. And those figures are pretty stark, because we know that people with less diverse social networks are significantly less likely to be positive or sympathetic about different groups in society. And social mixing between groups is one of the most profound ways of reducing prejudice and increasing empathy. And then, of course, with COVID-19, any opportunities for social mixing were severely curtailed. Research shows that social cohesion can increase in the aftermath of large-scale events or crisis, and I think that was true in those first early months. We saw an incredible outpouring of community spirit and support, but often that can be short-lived, and as the crisis unfolded, a much more complex picture emerged. The research shows that often there are increases in racist attitudes and discriminatory practices, and some of the studies that conducted during the pandemic demonstrated that. Borkowska and Lawrence's study of pre-pandemic and pandemic longitudinal data showed that overall levels of social cohesion were lower in June 2020 compared to all of the examined pre-pandemic periods. Findings from our own research project, our Beyond Us and Them research project in partnership with the University of Kent, which I'll talk about very briefly towards the end, has shown actually that both are true. There have been some increases in unity, and at the same time divisions have opened up over the course of the pandemic. but there are some areas that have remained more resilient, and I will come to those later. But these 9 organisations were delivering during some of the toughest times and during the lockdowns that happened, the subsequent, repeated lockdowns that happened over 2020, 2021. So the intended outcomes of the programme were to increase social cohesion, increase social trust at a neighbourhood level and between faith and race communities and local governance representatives, to increase a sense of responsibility to neighbourhood and local area, and also to increase a sense of belonging. So those were the intended outcomes of the whole of the Race and Faith Hate Crime Programme that was set up by MHCLG. And these were the delivery organisations and some of the areas that they covered. And you can see that many of the organisations were focused on areas where there have been historical and continuing challenges to social cohesion. So just to say a little bit about what these programmes achieved. So they were designed to reduce religiously and racially motivated hate crime by tackling some of the underlying issues, raising awareness, encouraging social mixing, and helping people to shift attitudes and behaviours. And through online and in-person activities, these organisations were able to overcome the lack of social contact between people in their communities they worked with. And that's extraordinary given the circumstances that they were working in. Between January and May 2021, the organisations enabled more than 48,300 young people and adults to directly participate in activities. And then many more were impacted through live streaming, social media coverage, and sharing resources and media to extend the reach even further. So the collective numerical reach of those organisations during a time of crisis and challenge is a significant achievement. The number of participants reached by each project varied because of the types of activities and the modes of delivery. So some of the organisations' projects involved many weeks of activities with the same participants aimed at in-depth understanding, building relationship skills and employability. Some organisations offered one-off activities with different participants each time, focused on raising intercultural awareness and understanding. And a few organisations delivered both, a combination of in-depth and one-off activities according to need. So it was via a range of different approaches. There were dialogue projects, sports and physical activities, music performance and art, online and offline, and 7 of the projects delivered entirely online. The organisations measured impact in different ways according to the design and delivery of their activities and the need of participants. So it wasn't possible to aggregate results across all of their initiatives. However, organisations used a range of indicators and measures to assess impact. So we pulled those together to assess the collective impact. So 90 to 95% of participants were more able to recognise prejudicial or discriminatory behaviour and were more knowledgeable about hate crime following participation in the programme. Participants reported substantial increases in openness, trust, knowledge about prejudice and discrimination, confidence to challenge prejudice and hate speech, greater openness to mixing with people from different backgrounds, and some participants reported substantial improvements in their confidence, health and well-being, and they learned skills that increased their employability and also their confidence in accessing training and future employment opportunities. So what the programme achieved was they engaged with underserved and underrepresented groups. They delivered across a really wide geographical area, and actually they felt that they were able to do that partly because of working online. It meant that some people who maybe would have struggled to engage with an in-person programme were actually able to engage in that online work. For example, mothers with young children, people with mobility issues who couldn't necessarily join in-person events and would have struggled to access locations and venues, women from particular faith groups, people who didn't feel safe going out after dark, The activities were bespoke, so they really sort of thought about what the needs were of their particular communities, and they used creative methods. So despite early concerns about online delivery, it didn't actually decrease the opportunities for creative methods of engaging with participants. So they had to be altered and adapted. They were highly successful. So some organisations provided opportunities for participants to write and perform, create new artwork, make films, and then those were showcased in online celebration activities and events. And one of the things we noticed with all of the activities was what we would call a kind of multiplier effect, in that the activities had benefits beyond the intended outcomes. Young people got involved in social action and empowering individuals. For example, United as One, the Newcastle United Foundation programme, young people took part in a social action project in their community, developing a film to highlight the personal impact of prejudice. As a result, young people felt really proud of their work, and 91% felt they had a good understanding of people of different faiths and races. There were community skills swaps, such as building bridges. Bradford, and I know we've got Nasir here from Manningham Housing Association, and he's going to share more with you about what they did. But they did things such as encouraging older people within their communities to have access to digital skills training. So they set up informal skills swaps, workshops with young people, showing older members of the community how to use kind of computers and online sort of video platforms and sort of mobile phones and that kind of thing. And this enabled mixing across socio-cultural divides as well as generations. And young people really increased in confidence, and older people gained new skills. And then finally, in the R project, which was a project run by Anthony Walker Foundation, young people attended a 12-week training programme that enabled them to create a social media campaign for the Speak Out Stop Hate hate crime project. And they had concrete examples of a campaign that they'd worked on. And as a result, some of the young people gained new employment from taking part in the programme. So I think in conclusion, the work of the organisations discussed here really shows the tangible benefits of people and project-based programmes. They achieved excellent outcomes, reach and impact against considerable challenges in a really short period of time. And I think we already know that an investment in social cohesion can demonstrate considerable benefits for those communities. So Belong's been measuring social cohesion in 6 local authority areas since May 2020, and all of those have been prioritising social cohesion. And we were able to demonstrate that respondents in those areas were twice as likely to volunteer compared to people living elsewhere, had a higher sense of neighbourliness, had a high level of trust in local government's responses, maintained positive attitudes about migrants to the UK, and demonstrated that a modest investment in social integration and cohesion brings individual and community-wide benefits. In the report itself, we make 2 sets of recommendations, one directed at policymakers and one at practitioners. So I'm going to share with you here the recommendations for practitioners. The overarching recommendation is to invest in programmes of social cohesion because they do bring tangible benefits. In terms of recommendations to practitioners and delivery organisations, some of the learning from the organisations was that working in partnership with local groups, and particularly with people with lived experience, was incredibly important and should absolutely be prioritised, to work in partnership and to collaborate with local people. And that includes taking time to build partnerships before delivery begins, so that the programme is designed and delivered with them. Really thinking about the safety of online delivery. all of the organisations had to really rethink their policies and procedures around safeguarding online spaces for delivery, and have put in place some excellent policies and procedures to make sure that that happens. To really think about blended delivery, so a mix of online and offline activities, because they really have the potential to widen access, especially for those who might find in-person attendance a barrier to engagement. Being flexible, being able to flex and adapt to online, to changing local circumstances. And then to extend the reach and engagement through dissemination events, which can showcase achievements, widen access and engagement, and reach a much more diverse audience. And then the final one is to really share learning and best practice with other practitioners and delivery organisations. And in some ways, this comes to something that we want to launch with this webinar. What Belong is launching this year is a series of communities of practice for our members. And one of our communities of practice is specifically focused around tackling race and faith hate crime. And that is with the aim of sharing and learning with others about what works best in terms of tackling race and faith hate crime in communities across the UK. So I'm not going to say very much more because I really want to give you a chance to hear from the organisations themselves, but I'm just going to leave you with the words of a young woman from Manningham Housing Association project Building Bridges, Bradford, Naomi Musomba Soda, and her spoken word.
How many times do you have to say the same message? Yeah. And it's like we're not interested. Yeah. There's no investment. Talk about your stress and all your goals, but make sure that you meant it. Yeah. I mean, it's hectic. 2 steps forward, yeah. But it's like we're in the same place. We're all here for one message, so make sure that it's a safe space. All we know is diversity. All we bring is unity in everything, in everything. Oh yeah. You can hate, you can take a step back. Bleed the same blood, you know my God made that. Hard to put in words, so I put it in a track. Had opinions, so we came with facts. I remember when they used to laugh at my skin, yeah. But now I got a lot within, yeah. Gotta pull out this sin, cause this ice is getting thin. Please don't be like that. Don't stop us in the back. 2 steps forward.
Thanks very much, Tim. Back to you.
Joe, thank you very much. Very clear overview of the programme. The 2 thoughts really coming to my mind. One is I feel really proud to have been part of that programme and of the remarkable outcomes of those projects. And actually, the other thing strikes me, Joe, is as a sector, how lucky we are to have you bringing that together and articulating it so clearly. We really are. Thank you very much, Joe. We should perhaps also say that we presented this report to senior civil servants and Lord Greenhow, the minister in the old MHCLG, back in September. And perhaps we might want to discuss later on where we think that, what we think some of that learning might go in a kind of policy and government direction, especially with the new Levelling Up white paper and how this work might feed into that. But that's great. Thank you very much, John. I must say, I feel rather hungry seeing the food from Manningham Housing Association. It looked delicious and great words too. But now, colleagues, we're going to turn to have 5-minute presentations by 3 of the organisations that took part in this programme and delivered such wonderful work. And it's not just 3 organisations, it's also 3 individual practitioners, each of whom you will see is passionate and very skilled in this area of work. And the first of those that I'm turning to is Sharon, who is from Solutions Not Sides. Solutions Not Sides, Sharon will say more, of course, but is an organisation that works in schools and communities on understanding the Israel-Palestine conflict, especially through people with lived experience of that region. And Sharon is the founder and director of Solutions Not Sides. So over to you, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Tim, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. Could someone enable screen sharing for me, please?
Sure, Kaya will do that, or Alex will do that.
So I'll just run through with you some of the activities that we did. We had a 12-month project that the MHCRG funded part of from the academic year September 2020 to August 2021. And the main thing that we're aiming to tackle, particularly in schools in the UK, in secondary schools, is anti-Semitism and Islamophobia in relation to the discourse around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And many of you will remember that last year in the late spring, early summer, this conflict hit our media headlines again. And the report actually from CST just came out in the last week or two on last year's figures. And you can see there that when that occurred, there is a direct correlation between a massive spike in anti-Semitism when we see this. But it wasn't only anti-Semitism. We also saw a big spike at exactly the same time in Islamophobia. So anti-Semitism was around 570% up and Islamophobia was around 430% up. So both very worryingly high. So the main outcomes that we were seeking to achieve through our programme are 5 things: greater empathy and humanisation of the British students towards Palestinians and Israelis, and also Jewish and Muslim people, and then reduced polarisation. So this doesn't mean that we were trying to make them all agree or move them all to a middle ground. It means trying to help them to learn to respectfully disagree. And that's also linked to helping them to gain the ability to embrace complex narratives. So to be excited and curious and interested by the shades of grey rather than feeling threatened by complexity.
I'm so sorry, Sharon, can I just chip into that? I think we've got a technical issue with the slides, which don't seem to be moving on. I don't know if Alex or Kaya can advise Sharon about, just we seem to be stuck on the first slide.
Okay, I'm just going to change this. There we go. 1 second.
Go on to slideshow view, Sharon. I think no, that's great. Thank you.
Yes. If you
Brilliant.
go to the next one, let's
But
just.
you can see that now, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So those are the figures from CST. You can see the spike in May there. So that in turn, of course, leads to reduced anti-Semitism and anti-Muslim hate. And finally, we're seeking to empower the next generation to be informed and constructive citizens working through our democratic channels to express their political views. We definitely don't want to depoliticize young people and make them think this is all nice and fluffy and, you know, we can hold hands and sing kumbaya. This is about empowering them to go out and make social and political change according to their own beliefs and opinions. And our strategy summary that we were using was 4 main things. So the first one, humanization, as Tim said, the opportunity to actually meet an Israeli and a Palestinian, sharing personal stories. The second one was diverse narratives. So I hope you can't hear that. That's my 4-year-old. Diverse narratives. So this is the joys of working from home in half term. Embracing complexity, like I said, not feeling threatened by it. And our Israeli and Palestinian speakers particularly model that respectful disagreement. Critical thinking skills, so particularly understanding the difference between positions and then all the interests and needs of human beings that actually lie behind those positions. And finally, care with language, so avoiding anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate speech when we're actually talking about this. Guys, I'm in the middle of a webinar. Can you please go? avoiding anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate speech.
Diverse narratives are coming in, Sharon. Don't worry, diverse narratives are fine.
That was a child and a dog looking at me from the doorway, which anyway, it's fine. They've been removed. Bless them. Okay. And the way that we do that is through our education program in the classroom based on 3 E's. It's a 3-part program, 3 one-hour sessions. So the first session is about exploration, understanding the historical narratives from Israeli and Palestinian perspectives. The second one is empathy, learning about the effects of the conflict on Palestinian and Israeli people themselves. And finally, empowerment, so undertaking a solutions-focused discussion with Palestinian and Israeli speakers using conflict resolution and critical thinking tools. We also issued a guide on social media called Israel-Palestine, Avoiding Anti-Semitic and Islamophobic Hate Speech. That was at the height of the conflict when it happened back in May last year. It got over 80,000 likes on Instagram, and that was just Instagram alone. It was also translated into other languages. It went viral on other platforms too. So it was obviously very, very helpful for people at that particular time when everyone was needing to talk about it, and the online discussions that were happening as well. And it's important to say as well that we're a unique and vital piece of a much wider puzzle. As obviously the Belong Network is part of this, and as has been described. So we provide specifically the Israel-Palestine tools and perspectives on this, but we fit into this wider puzzle of tackling particularly anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, but other prejudices as well. So just to finish my 5 minutes, performance against objectives. We had aimed to reach around 5,000 participants in schools during the academic year, partly because of the demand that happened that summer. In the summer term, we actually ended up achieving 175% of our target and reached 8,773 participants. And I have to say my team was incredible, working loads of overtime all through the summer term just to meet this need. We completed 10 personal story films. This was the personal stories of our Israeli Palestinian speakers that we put into short films to play them in the schools, particularly during COVID, because we couldn't fly them over like we normally do. So we're creating more and more of those films now, because we can work in a lot more schools that way. Our aim was to do 4 teacher training sessions with 50 participants. And again, suddenly the demand went flooding up in the summer term, and we did training sessions with 325 teachers and community leaders about how you talk about this topic. And then finally, we had the aim to do a student leadership program. Actually managed to do 1 online and 1 in person, which was great. The 1 online, we had over 30, it was just about 25 to 30 participants in that one. And then we did an in-person student leadership program finally in August, which we thought we couldn't do and then could because COVID allowed, with 24 participants. So we smashed or met all of our targets, which was amazing. And the outcomes that we found for our 3 E's was that with exploration, we found that there was a very high percentage of students completing the feedback for us who gained an understanding of diverse perspective. They indicated that was the case. They became more open-minded about the issues generally. They started to be aware of a distinction between political structures and ordinary citizens, and the kind of critical thinking behind that. And they also became aware of peace activism and respectful dialogue that is happening, that we never see in the media, of course, so that they usually don't even think that's necessarily going on. So that was positive. Our empathy outcomes, accepting the humanity of both sides, a shift from enmity to empathy. These are students who go into the classroom having put something on their feedback form beforehand, before they start the programme, that indicates that they have quite a strong anti-Palestinian or anti-Israeli sentiment, or maybe even anti-Semitic or Islamophobic, not the same thing obviously, but related. And they've actually, they show on the same form at the end a shift in their attitude. And rejecting violence, and then a massive appreciation of the Palestinian and Israeli speakers, the opportunity to talk directly with them. It's always the highlight and the USP of our programme. And then empowerment. So a non-partisan solutions-focused attitude is adopted by a good number of the students who participate. The ability to critically assess bias in the media, and that awareness of dialogue being conducted and efforts towards peace. So we really want to continue. The Secretary of State for Education contacted all schools in the country and made them aware of our programme last summer, which has really boosted our bookings. But obviously, resources are always in this for these incredible peace activists. So thank you.
Sharon, thank you very much indeed. That social media guide that you produced, certainly I used it, and we used it here at the Anne Frank Trust. And as you know, you've trained your staff. We really know what brilliant quality work you do, and it's great to see that summary of it, including the outcomes. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I was brought up in West Yorkshire, and I'm very pleased to go to West Yorkshire now to Nas Hussain at Manningham Housing Association, which works in Bradford and Keighley. And Nas is going to talk about the project which they ran there, which you've already seen a glimpse of from Joe's presentation. Nas, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm just going to do a screen share, so please bear with me a second. So there we go. Can everybody see this? Sorry, I'm going to do a slide. I'm going to do a. Oh, is that better? Can you see?
I think it's still not quite the right view. If you can get, we seem to be able to see the next slide as well as the current one.
Oh, okay. So if you just bear with me a second, is that better, Tim?
I think it probably is. I'm surprised that you went from. I know that'll do fine now. We can see it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Nasser Sin. I'm the Community Partnerships and Investment Manager at Manningham Housing Association, based over in Bradford. Just a quick overview of Manningham. Manningham Housing Association is a very, very small housing provider. I want to say small. We've only got 1,400 properties across the district of Bradford, and primarily most of our housing stock serves larger families. So therefore, we have 4, 5, 6, 7 bedroom properties to meet the needs of South Asian and wider communities of Bradford. Just a quick whistle tour of our Building Bridges Bradford project, in particular the learning. The project was very much delivered, as Joe mentioned earlier, from January 2021 to May 21, so it was over 5 months, or just under 5 months. Our project was very much geared up to promote and share values amongst different communities of Bradford, and also to tackle discriminatory and hate crime and amongst our service users and the wider communities of Manningham. And also there was an element around directly responding to the issues of COVID. So we had to sort of reprofile our project to ensure that we were therefore able to meet the needs of everybody in the community. So how did we go about delivering our projects? Our project was very much focused around three key themes of 3 key strands: community conversations, good neighbours days, and also we had a range of social action projects and initiatives that were geared up to support the communities and people most in need. So in terms of our community conversations, we had regular weekly sessions with different organizations, faith organizations, mosques, churches, synagogues, to bring a range of different people, so a range of diverse people together, to encourage building positive and healthy relationships, discussing issues around faith, around hate crime, and also some of the common issues in the communities in terms of organized crime and drugs and alcohol misuse. We also had weekly sessions delivered through the West Yorkshire Police, and these were very much targeting at young people, where young people were brought together to raise issues in terms of hate crime and what they were feeling in the communities and what support could be made available. And this was very much to sort of raise awareness and also build relationships amongst users and providers. We had a number of sessions delivered by marginalised community groups, Black Unite and Free to Be Me, LGBTIQ organisation. And that was very much bringing a diverse range of people together to raise awareness of issues affecting them specifically, you know, in terms of hate, in terms of understanding the issues that they were facing in such difficult times. Followed up by Good Neighbour Days, and these were very much where we were bringing all our community members, and when I say all our community members, we were working with service users as young as 8, through coffee mornings, online cooking sessions, and music and dance therapy. We felt these activities and initiatives were bringing people together, and they were therefore making meaningful impact in terms of practically doing and actioning on things. So for example, our online cooking sessions were diverse. We had a range of different cuisines that were being delivered, cooked online, and we were actually sharing how to sort of cater and deliver, cook these different dishes. And that was bringing a range of different people together. Music therapy, Joe has kindly played the video that was produced by a young person as young as 16. And many of our service users felt that that was absolutely vital, because music therapy was bringing people together, not just in terms of cohesion and social mixing, but also helping to address some of their health and well-being issues. And more specifically, we also had a range, I'd say, under 40 initiatives around mental health, employment support, and digital inclusion. Joe mentioned earlier, our digital inclusion project was geared up to support the elderly members of our society, and it was very much delivered through young people and community champions. This was a crucial need for us, because our project was very much 100% online, and what we realized that there were members of our society who were digitally excluded. So therefore, in order for them to receive support, for example, how to reduce obesity or how to become physically active, they needed to know how social media and WhatsApp and all these other channels worked. So we had to empower our service users to be ready to receive that particular support. Employment support, again, we were finding issues in our communities. Most of our service users were primarily from their BAME communities. People were losing jobs, being made furlough. So we were therefore required to deliver a community support in terms of employability, you know, helping them to get back into employment, giving them the confidence, providing CV and interview support skills. This was a wonderful project, and made some progress in terms of getting people into employment. Just quickly, in terms of some of the case studies, I mean, we've got a detailed evaluation which we are more than happy to share, and you can find that on our website. But this was an LGBT group coming together to discuss issues affecting them, and also bringing a wider communities to build healthy and prosperous relationships. Black Boy Unite was again another organization, community group working locally, delivering online conversations with the wider communities on the issues affecting themselves directly. And these were delivered on evenings and weekends to ensure that everybody had an opportunity to access support and build relationships and meet new people. In terms of some of our other successes over the period of time, we were able to engage over 2,200 beneficiaries from across the Bradford district. Just over 1,200 beneficiaries benefited from our health and wellbeing sessions. So we delivered online yoga, online Zumba-size, boxercise. We also delivered wheelchair exercises for those with mobility and disabilities. And again, it was done very much online. Wider partnerships, you know, we work with a range of organizations to deliver, co-designed sessions, healthy eating amongst young people and elderly, IT skills, even to the point where we had some flooding and food parcels were distributed to the most needy and vulnerable. In terms of our employability support, 40 service users had been supported through that particular project. And we were able to get 7 people into full-time employment, and that was absolutely wonderful, because it's not just 7 people, it's 7 families, and being able to provide for 7 members or up to 7 members in a family was absolutely a wonderful outcome. A good proportion, about 14% of our service users who accessed the employment support moved into volunteering with us under the Experience Volunteering Project. And that was very much to get them or move them closer to the labour market, and also give them confidence in difficult times. We had a business coaching initiative, and that was very much about helping BME women in particular to move into enterprise. A number of users had moved into self-employment, so there's a group, well, there's a young lady who's now delivering yoga sessions online, and that's an employment for her, which is absolutely wonderful because opportunities had been created through this online delivery. We also had a range of physical activities in the form of, as I said earlier, yoga, zumba-size, wheelchair exercises, boxing, boxercise, and these were all delivered online. We needed to ensure that the physical health was being managed and looked after really. In terms of the community conversations and bringing diverse people together to build relationships for social mixing, just under 300 people benefited from our Good Neighbour Days and tours, virtual tours into churches and masjids and synagogues. We were hoping ideally to do this offline, if that makes sense, but unfortunately, due to the circumstances and national and localized restrictions meant we were forced or encouraged to go online. So that was absolutely fantastic. Again, some of the challenges families and service users, vulnerable service users were facing was around money management, losing employment statuses. So we delivered multiple healthy and online cooking sessions on low budgets. Digital inclusion was absolutely massive. What we realized, majority of our service users did not have capital. So Manningham Housing Association was able to invest in tablets, which then were hired out or given to service users so they can actually use those tablets to receive support when needed. So that was absolutely crucial for us in terms of meeting or supporting some of the most needy in the communities. In terms of challenges, like everybody else, short-term project, digital barriers, we were having to go online 100%, and that presented us, yes, with opportunities, but there were also some challenges. Lacking equipment, again, yes, that was a massive barrier for us, but we were able to overcome that through dipping into our reserves to invest in tablets. Our team, our delivery team was extremely diverse, and yes, we had COVID and sicknesses, and which did present us with challenges. But however, we were still able to utilize community champions and sessional workers from the local community with lived experience to continue the momentum. And closure of key services, for example, that was also a massive issue. We were hoping to deliver some of these sessions from local community hubs and community centres, but unfortunately, with those being closed, we were therefore having to help them to deliver online sessions. So that was also a challenge. And in some cases, we were having to invest in licenses so they could deliver Zoom sessions online. Just quickly,
Nas, forgive me for just I'm a little bit conscious of time. So gosh, it's breathtaking.
Brilliant.
Everything you've done, it really is. But I wonder if you could just
summarize.
Couple of last points.
Yeah, just a couple of last points. So in addition to, obviously it was a short-term project, but in terms of sustainability and legacy, we are currently delivering some aspects of the project through in-house and also through community champions. So for example, coffee mornings are continuing, mental health workshops are continuing. And also we will be working with some of our partners to continue supporting the mental health element of this project. So that's very much being done in-house, but overall it was a successful project, and extremely grateful for the funding received from the what was known then as the Ministry of Housing and Communities. Thank you.
Nas, thank you. My word, it really was a successful project. What I admire so much is how deeply local it is, how absolutely grounded in and empowering of your local community is, and that within that community, how wide-ranging from aged 8 right up to elderly people, including LGBT groups and Black people, and just the range and the depth of your community engagement is, I'm full of admiration. I really am. Thank you so much, Nas. I'm sure there will be questions for you, but we're just going to move on to our third case example, if we may now, which is the Faith and Belief Forum, which is a national interfaith charity, originally the Three Faiths Forum, working across Christianity, Islam and Judaism, but now working in all faiths. And we have Tim Mortimer, their national programs manager, and the program run through this scheme was particularly focused in East London, in Barking and Dagenham, and in Birmingham. If we could turn to Tim. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks so much. Also, Tim, and sorry that that's very confusing for everyone, but it's really lovely to be here and to meet you all. Before I start, I should say, unfortunately, I don't have any children or dogs, so I'm not sure my presentation is going to be as exciting as Sharon's, but I will do my best. So, as Tim says, we ran the Building Closer Communities project, which runs in Birmingham and Barking and Dagenham, and it was a community linking project. And in the project, we paired grassroots pairs of faith, belief, or community groups. Many were of faith character, some were non-religious or cultural groups, and each pair met for a series of conversations. We had online facilitators that helped to open up the spaces and to facilitate those conversations and ensure impact. There were a total of 20 groups on the programme, and over 5 months we trained up a community connector, so one person within each of those 20 groups who maybe hadn't facilitated or ran dialogue before but was very well connected in that group and was a person who was already trusted, and we upskilled them so that they could help lead the project with us, but then also when we were pulled out because the government funding ended, they could carry on some of those conversations. And really interestingly, a lot of those 20 absolutely lovely people weren't your sort of traditional concept of who like a faith leader or a community leader might be. A lot of them were people behind the scenes who didn't often get much of the credit in their communities, but were maybe like running all the food banks and social action projects, or knowing a lot of people around the scenes. Maybe they were like youth work people, a lot of them were women, but yeah, they really helped to drive the change of the project. I guess the project was focused around the idea that across the UK there a lot of people of difference that live in close proximity, but there's not always that many opportunities for meaningful social mixing, which is something that Joe talked about, which the government were trying to address through this grant, and what we really picked up on. We felt like it was a brilliant opportunity to challenge perceptions, reduce stereotypes and build long-term trust. And there were 2 tranches of successful applicants. Half were kind of directly working on hate crime, and half were working on creating the conditions to make hate crime less likely to happen, and our project was in the latter. So who was on the project, some of the stories about who wasn't and also who wasn't. I had an interesting conversation with a vicar from a church that was doing loads of kind of cross-communal and interfaith work already, and we told her that we didn't think she needed to be on the programme because the impact we were looking to achieve, that people in her church were already getting it from the amazing work she was doing. And she was initially a bit disappointed because she thought it sounded fun, but I do think that that's really important recruitment work to do, to think about who needs the programme. Yeah, so we had a church on the programme who had identified some anti-Muslim and anti-refugee rhetoric within its members and wanted to be linked with a group that could help address that, which was really interesting. We had several links that were between a faith-based organisation and a secular organisation, like a faith-based community centre and a secular community centre, a faith-based food bank and a secular food bank, and you know, we're awaiting the next census results, and at Faith and Belief Forum we're expecting to see roughly 50% of the UK saying that they have some kind of a faith and 50% saying that they don't. And so that kind of religious secular conversation and dialogue we're feeling is really important right now. There were mosque and church links on the same road, where the people from the mosque and the church were saying, oh yeah, I walk past that place of worship every day and I see people coming out of it and I think, oh, they're on the same road as us, and like I wonder what they do and if it's similar to us. But I've never actually sat down and had a conversation with someone who goes there. So that presented interesting opportunities. And a final one, 2 groups, African Portuguese speaking community and Sikh Women's Alliance embarking in Dagenham. They're a really interesting link, I guess. Like, if you looked at some kind of like local authority understanding of those groups, they were both newly arrived groups in the area, but actually they were so different, and they had so many kind of complex diasporic and cultural histories that they shared with each other, and they mostly found difference, but then one element of similarity they found was singing and how that related to their culture, and we had this like amazing session at the end where they both like performed a song to each other over Zoom. It's, you know, quite hard to stay in time with each other, but they did an amazing job. It was an interesting end to that dialogue. I guess what I would say in terms of some of the challenges or the limitations really were that this was a 5 to 6 month project that the government funded. You know, we're in a room full of practitioners here, and I'm sure you all know as well as I do that in order to really do meaningful social mixing well and to build trust well, you need time. And so the groups got to know each other, had some sessions. I think that we achieved a really good impact, but I would have absolutely loved to do a 2-year project and see where we were at the end of it, and who all the people in the program could have brought in, who wouldn't initially have felt comfortable doing the program, but by the end, because their friend was on it, might have been willing to get involved as well. And I guess like I was talking about who was and who wasn't on the program, and I think particularly given the length of time on the program, it meant that we worked in Birmingham and Barking and Dagenham, which are 2 locations that we already knew, and we already had workers with connections, and with a project of that amount of time, we weren't able to pick some of the new locations we weren't already working in, which we would have loved to work in, and we had a couple of weeks to do the recruitment phase. So I remember some really interesting conversations going to a warehouse in Dagenham, which every Sunday welcomes literally thousands of African worshippers, and kind of talking to the leader there who wanted to do the project but was worried about how some people in his church would see that as a positive thing, but some people in his church would be very worried and be worried that they were compromising something of their faith, belief and identity. And we got quite far in that conversation, but they eventually chose not to do the project. And I feel like if we'd have had 3 months to have those conversations properly before the project started, they probably would have done it. So that's a slight sadness, but something to bear in mind. Yeah, so really loved doing the project, had some amazing impact and some stories, but would love to have been longer. I guess like you all, I've been reading the latest white papers coming out of the Department of Levelling Up, and I'm not feeling super confident about faith and integration being like at the top of their priority list and agenda. I don't know what's going to go on about more integration areas and more opportunities to do this kind of work, but also I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll all be able to keep doing this work together. Thanks.
Colleagues, friends, I think we have reached the end of our time this morning because we want to finish by 11:15. Can I say a big thanks to Tim Mortimer, Nas Hussain and Sharon Booth for presenting your work so warmly to us, and your personal commitment to it shines through, as well as all the great detail and evidence that you brought us. Thank you so much. And I guess what I hope for all of us is, you know, we all know we're up against very tough challenges around social barriers and prejudiced views and hateful attitudes in much of our society. And in the challenge of doing that work, let's remember that there is also fantastic and brilliant work that really makes a difference, and that we're part of a network and community of practitioners and organisations who can support and be inspired by each other and really take forward to make a fairer and more equal world. Belong's a key tool in that process, and I do very much hope you will think about joining the network if you're not already members. And in fact, we are bringing together a community of practice within Belong of organisations specifically working on tackling faith and race-based hate crime. If you're interested in that, in getting involved or connecting with that community of practice, please do get in touch with Belong. They'd be delighted to hear from you. I hope you'll forgive me or indulge me if I'm just going to finish with a quotation from Anne Frank, who I think epitomised much of what we have been talking about this morning about celebrating difference as well as building bridges across difference, reminding of us of our common humanity. On the 6th of July 1944, Anne wrote in her diary, "We are all searching for happiness. We are all leading lives that are different and yet the same." Thank you very much, Belong. Thank you, everybody. It's been really great to be with you this morning. Have a great day. Happy Friday.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.